Hello everyone, Maurice and welcome to Things Invest. Talk about investing, finance, fresh development. For today's early terms only. The investment I'm going to talk about today will be NEO, ticker NIO. So as noticed, it's been a while since I last covered NEO on the equity side of the portion. I covered Tesla yesterday, and I feel like, I currently am a relatively large investor into both Tesla and NEO. NEO, I currently hold about 7,720 shares at the moment. My cost average about like 2170 something. So it's a relatively large position in my stock portfolio at the moment. And with respect to today, as I'm recording this up at 2:26 p.m. on Eastern time, currently trading like the $44, down by like 4.4% so far. And with respect to the reversal that we've experienced ever since basically back in the day on May 13th, where we had that dip because of the negative CPI report, and also with respect to the negative Chinese tension that we've been getting, that's been percolating for months now, and also with respect to the chip shortage that's been seems like it's still rating, right? In the more recent time frame, I was looking at the news. I was having lunch while reading the news, at the same time. With respect to NEO, it's definitely got hit relatively, seismic today. With respect to down 4.45% at the moment right now. And the main drivers of this sell is mainly cultivated from two specific catalysts, right? One is the reinforcement. The news around the regulatory concerns stem from the Chinese government trying to enforce more regulatory pressure and compliance tightening over the data security concern that's been percolating, right, ever since that company Didi, the company that is a vehicle for hire, kind of comparable like a Uber in the U.S. or globally speaking, right? And it seems like based on the media affectations so far and coming directly from the government, China said that specifically, and I quote, that they plan on stepping up the regulations on all the Chinese firms listed despite if it's being offshore or in mainland China going forward, right? So obviously negative news on NEO, knowing the fact that NEO is a company based out of China, right? Founded by William Li, obviously. And secondly, another negative news that's really hit the EV sector and some of them semiconducting and more blue chip type of not blue chip but more technological hardware type of companies. It stemmed from the article depictions around the foreshadow of the chip shortage that's expected to durate until 2023. So obviously, with these two macro, um, you know, market catalysts, if you may, right? One has to do with regulatory compliance pressure. The other one has to do with the supply and demand imbalance going forward, which obviously drives a lot of negative sentiments around investors, right? Will subsequently drive the sell-off that we're seeing right now. So I'm gonna go through a technical analysis to see how we're trending going forward, right? Because the earnings call for NEO is expected to happen on August 10th. So we still have some time. We're basically like 2.5 weeks out from now, a little bit more than that actually. However, we have to be mindful of the resistance level that we are currently sustaining. It seems like we are struggling around like the $43 level. And next leap down would be below the $39 level, which I identified in the technical analysis previously. If you look back into my videos, I haven't changed the chart at all, and it's still staying within the pattern. So I'm going to kind of take a look at the technical analysis again to see how we're trending going forward. Do we see more of a sell-off or do we see more of a pump going forward? All right, so stay tuned, stick around, let's make some money. Right, so moving on to the technical analysis for NEO, ticker NIO, I'm recording as of 2:31 p.m. on Eastern time, basically 1.5 hours away from the market closing today, right? So you can see that today we're relatively a red day today. Despite the market being relatively neutral, but obviously because of the negative catalyst that we have identified from the news that we heard today, right? So it seems like we are kind of hovering above the $43.05 level, which I identified previously, right? So this is a level of resistance that we have been sustaining historically, right? And it seems like we are above it, right? And so take a look at the RSI. We are pretty much like leaning more toward an oversold level. So I think we do have a propensity to potentially, hit the $43 level and then recuperate from there and then subsequently rally back. I think today was just a double whammy news, right? We had two negative news, which are relatively meaningful, right? These are substantive news that can change the course of nature for the business fundamental, and obviously with respect to the margin compression that could potentially happen. And with that compression, that could subsequently hinder the Wall Street expectations and the estimates going forward, which will subsequently hinder the earnings call, if you may, right? So something to be mindful of. But I think these are areas of improvement that will subsequently get better over time, right? NEO is one of those companies that is growing not just in China but internationally as well, right? With respect to the expansions from European nation on the Norway debut that happened successfully, right? And also with respect to the governmental dynamic that supports the green energy from Norway and just the overall European nation. That's a lot of untapped market that we're not really baking into the adjustments for the financial forecast going forward, right? So I would say NEO is highly undervalued at the moment in a discounted cash flow analysis perspective. I think $43 level is the great level to dollar cost average at. I actually plan on buying a little bit before the market closed today. I think this is pretty much a very substantive level, right? The 43.05. Do we see us breaking down to the 39.01? We'll see, right? Because the FOMC meeting is on the 28th next week, right? So if we hear anything specifically negative on inflationary pressure, or if we hear more reinforcement news on obviously the chip shortage, and obviously with the Chinese tension next week, we do have a relatively large leap down, right, all the way to the $39 level. Obviously, we'll hover around like the 40 because 40 is just a psychological level, but the real level is 39.01 based on the technical analysis that we've seen so far, right? We have a relatively large leap down. Do we see 34.69, which is the next level leap down? I think the likelihood will be relatively low, knowing the fact that the MACD is crossed for a long duration of time now, and the RSI is relatively depleted. So for us to get there, you will basically destroy the charts in a psychological and a supply and demand dynamics perspective. So that wouldn't make any sense to me, based on the charts that we're reading so far. So I wouldn't mind buying some today, to be honest with you. Again, for NEO to break through the $40 level is a relatively difficult one. It is a very substantive level of resistance. We've tested at least 12 times historically. So it's a good level to buy in, and I wouldn't be, and it's just a logical way for it to risk mitigate going forward as well. All right, just to recap all numbers in the technical analysis, again, the $43 level, we have a, high propensity to go that way. But if you buy at 44 right now, I wouldn't really blink an eye. I think that's a relatively good level to dollar cost average because the risk is relatively mitigating going forward. Obviously, with the macro news that we are percolating, obviously, there's something we just have to be able to risk mitigate by maneuvering through the pattern that we're experiencing so far, right? So with respect to attractive level, $40 and $39.50. If we break the 43, we're definitely leaping down to the 40. That's just a matter of fact, right? But the 40 again is just a flat number that people typically buy at, right? But the real level is more like $39.50 based on the historical trends, right? So if I was to play with the chips, I would put a little bit, have some skin in the game, maybe 15% of the chips at $43. And then incur more risk exposure as we leap down or we break through that resistance, right? But the $40 level, again, is very difficult for us to break through. And it's just really driven by fear and fear mongering with respect to the news. And these are relatively substantive news. So I do understand the fear and the pressure that we're sustaining right now. But if you think long term wise, again, right, with respect to my projections, $85 in the next 12 months, 97.7% upside. 2 times your money from here. I'm actually up 2 times right now because my cost average about like 20 something dollars, so I'm relatively lucky. But we can actually get there and triple my valuation going forward. I think for NEO to hit $100 or a couple $100 in the near term, when I talk about near term, like next 2 to 3 years or 5 years from now, I think that's very logical based on just the global adoptions going forward and the business development that has already been doing in such a short amount of time. So for us to percolate that in that direction wouldn't be surprising to me. Right, so this is for respect my technical analysis on NEO, ticker NIO. Hopefully this is helpful in giving you that clarity, that level of executions that we can apply the methodology going forward. Right, I really appreciate you guys, and feel free to hit me up if you have any questions specifically. Right, always available, always responsive to be trying to help as many people as we can together collectively. Right. So yeah, stay tuned for next week coming up.